Okay, thank you, Kanoy. And yes, you are absolutely right. Now is a good time to stand up, shake it out, stretch a little bit, maybe run and grab a coffee and come running back. Don't go too far because we do have a lot of excitement left in our day here together today. But I think actually, Dr. Zhao, you really just set the perfect theme for us today. We are here to discover new things. That is our tone, that is our theme, and that is going to keep us rolling into our panel conversation. Let me introduce our wonderful panelists to you because we are going to dig in even further into how and where we are seeing the impacts of AI in education and maybe starting to look ahead at that future. What's coming? What should we be aware of? All of that and more coming your way in our next panel conversation. And so, Kanoy, I hope you had a good, very short break there because we are back at it. Kanoy, I'm going to let you introduce our wonderful and thought-leading experts here with us. I'll hand things over to you. Take it away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you for joining our AI Impact Smart Panel today. Again, my name is Kanoy Namahoy, and I'm the Director of Content for Smart Brave Education and Business Services. And I hope you enjoyed our keynote discussion with Dr. Yong Zhao of the School of Education at the University of Kansas. This sponsored panel session aims to continue that conversation about AI and how it's transforming learning and instruction. Now we want to drill down. We want to get into the nuts and bolts of things and give you some actionable insights about implementing AI in your school or with your district. So we've got a great lineup for you today. Our panel, our speakers for the session are Hillary Zombek, Education Lead at Brain Freeze, and Charlie Thayer, Chief Academic Officer at Lincoln Learning Solutions. Welcome, both of you. Alrighty, so let's jump into this. Educators see a lot of possibility with AI and with personalized learning. But talk to us about how they can use AI to personalize learning experiences for all of those students. So we're talking about the student who has learning disabilities all the way to the student who has perhaps advanced aptitudes. Hillary, why don't you go ahead and kick us off here?
Yeah. So differentiation and personalization is a lot of what we hear from our schools. I think AI brings a great opportunity to be able to, at least on the one side of the spectrum, if a child has a learning disability, you can put their IEP in there and create personalized materials to that learning disability. So if they need, it in dyslexic font or, students with ADHD might learn in more of a gamification route than just like a classic flashcard study guide. That presents a great opportunity. I think on the other side of the spectrum, schools don't always have an advanced program. So if you want to be able to tweak certain materials, maybe you're in grade 5, but you're reading at a 7th grade level, it's really easy to prompt an AI model or an AI solution that you're using to say, hey, make Hillary's at a 7th grade level, make hers a little bit more challenging because she's doing really well with this material. I think an important part when we talk about personalization too is the students in the middle. We always talk about the students that have learning disabilities or the advanced learners. I myself was, a B student, and I could have just used some extra time with the material. And so personalizing to the way different students learn, or just really giving every student in the class extra one-on-one time with the material, or like a virtual teacher that the teacher might not have time to spend with those students in the middle as well, I think is something that we're hearing a lot from our schools and the benefit of using AI.
And I think it's a really important thing to focus on. You're right. We do tend to look at these, these opposite ends of the spectrum, but the young people that are in the middle of this, how do we maintain that stimulation for all students and really hone in on the areas where they have successes and where they can really find enjoyment in the curriculum. And that's part of the conversation we had during our keynote. Charlie, I want to toss that over to you. How do you see AI being able to personalize learning experiences so that we are truly reaching all students?
Yeah, so I think Hillary, what you laid out is spot on. Really, I think the possibilities are endless, and it doesn't stop short at just a few groups of students. You can really tailor to whatever even interest based are, right? And you mentioned the interests and the engagement. I think that's another another really good capability that AI can bring to the table to allow to not just have this homogenized curriculum, this streamlined, normalized curriculum. You can really tailor it to further engage those students who might otherwise be dejected or not as engaged in their learning. So I agree with everything that you shared, Hillary, for sure. I really think one of the things that that we encounter sometimes with some of the schools that we work with is sometimes this can be overwhelming. There's a lot that can be done. You can't boil the ocean, right? Thinking about fully tailoring instruction to every individual learner that I might interface with on a daily basis could be very, very overwhelming. I mean, we at Lincoln, we deal with thousands of students, so being able to take standardized courses that we've created and then create a variety, really an infinite number of permutations of those seems like a lot. AI, I think, makes that possible, but we've got to start somewhere. So I think starting small is really key. Vetting tools, making sure that whatever solutions you're seeking out are closely aligned with whatever solution you're trying to hit. And yeah, I think start small, but the possibilities are there. That's the thing that really excites me the most about AI is things I dreamed about 10 years ago when it comes to curriculum design, curriculum development. They're not necessarily in my grasp, but they're a whole heck of a lot closer now than they were before.
I like that term that you use, boil the ocean. I'm going to have to use that more often because I think I think that perfectly sums up some of the situations that we're seeing in education. We've got this tool that can do so many things. Where do you start? And actually, Dr. Zhao made a point around this in our conversation, and he was. I asked him a question like, what advice do you have? And he said, oh, well, basically, in a way, he sort of said, it's not possible. You're not going to change some of these things. It was exactly the opposite way I thought he was going to go. But what he came around to was like, you have to start small. Change really starts on the individual level. So start with that, and then things will progress and they will pick up. And I think that's a really, really important thing for us to emphasize is that it's easy to get overwhelmed. So just stop and start at the small levels, at the individual levels. He talks about schools within schools. I think there's a lot of ways that we can go with that as we boil the ocean. I like that.
I was just going to add one thing. I think you can start really small with something like your students' interests. We work with a lot of elementary school kids where maybe if their spelling test was Barbie themed, or I don't know, the local football team themed, like that's still personalization, and it's getting that engagement up, and it's getting you to learn different ways to use AI, and it's fun. Obviously, we want to tailor things to the more serious side of the curriculum, but you can also have fun with it. It doesn't always have to be, this huge undertaking in this project and really scary. It can be very small and very fun.
I think so. And I don't think it's a bad time for us to negate the value of fun.
Yeah.
I think that, we don't usually have, especially as grown-ups, we don't usually have trouble with making things, bland and professional and focused on certain targets. And I'm not suggesting that we should get rid of any of that. Obviously that's part of it. And he and I had that conversation too, like what is curriculum? He wants to get away from some of the prescribed standards. And he just kept coming back to this thing of engagement and targeting in on the students' interests. But with this whole issue around personalized instruction comes the obvious elephant in the room, which is data privacy, which is a big deal. And it's something that school districts are very, they're very cognizant of the risks there. So, Charlie, why don't you start us out here? How do schools balance personalized instruction with, being prudent and being responsible with their data, their data?
Well, I think it starts with really being aware of what data is being harvested in the beginning anyways, right? What data do you need to personalize, and is it, where's it going? Who's in custody of it, right? So I think that kind of goes back to, and I maybe mentioned something about this a few minutes ago, really comes down to being able to vet those vendors, right? Everyone has an AI tool. You go to a conference these days, any kind of educational conference, walk the floor, everyone has an AI solution. They're all over the place. And it's exciting. I mean, it makes sense that those things are everywhere. but the space is developing very quickly. So sometimes it's important for us to make sure that these groups that are kind of up and coming off the ground and building these different solutions, that they're being mindful of some of the things that are going on in the background. So I think it comes down to being able to be aware of what data is being collected, what data is being used in these tools, where it's going, who's in custody of it, and not just being aware of it, but asking the questions like, what are you doing with our data, right? Like it's not necessarily just the students' data. The school has a responsibility to be a good steward of that data. Some of it needs to be used when it comes to personalizing. It's just a kind of a fact. Can't personalize something if I don't know anything about you. So really just being, I think, able to ask those questions, make sure that the data is being used in the right ways, and not misused or not going out into the ether. That's one of the things that we've really tried to toe the line on when we talk about even beyond data privacy and student data. There's lots of information that can be pushed into these models, and then it kind of accrues that information. So for me, I think it really just makes it comes down to making sure that you know the right questions to ask, and that you are asking the questions, and then holding these groups accountable at the end of the day for what they're doing with data.
Hillary, you go. I do want to comment on something, but go ahead, and I want to hear your point, your perspective on this.
Yeah. So I think what Charlie said is spot on. Obviously, review their DPA, make sure you know what their retention policies are, where are they hosting that information, who are they sharing with it, are the models training on your data. But I think also, like, you can get pretty far in personalization without, someone's information, like the interest, the grade level, those types of things. We don't have to jump into using their IEP. Obviously, that has a lot of sensitive information. And I would say, you really want to look at vendors who are taking a security posture. A lot of AI tools are just coming out and thinking about how can we automate this? How can we make everyone's lives easier, which is great. That's a starting point. But 2-3 steps further than this, how are we governing those AI applications? I know at Brain Freeze, we have a feature called Redact and Replace. Accidents happen. Teachers write emails, we put a resume in something, somebody's first name, last name, email slips through the cracks. We redact that information. So we would just say, instead of Hillary Zombeck, student A, that doesn't go into the large language model. When it comes back, the teacher doesn't even know that we redact and replaced that. It has the student's name there. So things like that, where, it's not 100% fail-safe in some of these tools, even if they're not training on your data. You don't want to have personal information in there, but mistakes happen. So make sure they have some kind of safety net to prevent it if they do accidentally, put some personal information in there.
And I think that's super important. Because mistakes do happen. My son is a school technologist at a district in Texas. I am always amused by the stories that I hear from him about things. And he cut his teeth in technology by working with his grandmother and his aunts, and so he learned to be patient, young. And so he realizes, okay, they don't know what they're doing, and they don't, they've got good intentions, but these things are going to happen. So what kinds of questions should, what are some of you said there's no way to be 100% safe, but what are some of the questions that schools should be asking so that they can better protect themselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would start with the DPA and review that. That's going to give you a lot of information around how long they hold your data. Do you have control over the retention policy? When you put it into their tool, is it staying there? Is it just being used for that query and it's going away? And I mean, you can even, if you're not a lawyer or have a lawyer, you could always put that into, an LLM and say, explain this to me as if I'm, a 10th grader. So, other ways to use AI. And then I would ask too, like, a lot of teachers want to use IEPs, or, AI gets more powerful the more data you use it, like Charlie said. And so if we do put personal information in there, what happens to it? And see what they say.
I think that's fair, because we are human and people are they're going to slip, because you're a teacher, you're focused on teaching. And with all these other things that we have to be aware of, because the slippery slope can be very dangerous indeed. Charlie, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, you both just kind of hit it right on the head. What I was thinking, it's very exciting, and it's very easy to get maybe caught up in the excitement, and not necessarily consider this data is out here, and this data, I have to be responsible of it. I mean, I'm guilty myself of getting very excited with some of these new tools, new toys, whatever you want to call them, and maybe. Getting overly animated or overly excited with wanting to employ some of these things without doing that due diligence. That due diligence, I think, is a must, especially in the education space, to make sure that
100%. I think also we live in a culture where we're so just used to giving up our information.
Yep.
And so it's a good reminder, and it's a good reminder for all of us. Seriously, on this call, do your due diligence. Let's shift just a bit, and I want to talk about everyone's favorite AI topic, ethics. What ethical issues and potential biases do school administrators need to be aware of as they are integrating their AI systems? I've got a couple questions underneath this one, but let's start there. What ethical issues and potential biases? Hillary, you want to start us?
Yeah. So, I mean, bias in AI is very much real. So all of these large language models were trained on everything that's been on the internet up until 2023. And AI doesn't always know the right answer versus the wrong answer. It just knows what appears more. And that's what they go with correct. So if it was trained on information that's biased, it's going to happen. So typically what we recommend is like an 80-20 rule. AI is there as a tool to help you. It should never be used to make behavioral calls on what you should do with a student. Like you're the teacher, your children, you should be checking in, use it as a tool, but understand that there's bias. Different models are good at different things. So some vendors will just use one model. You may have flexibility to use multiple models and prototype and test what gives better outputs. And I mean, it's a very real thing. So I would say, just check it, and always a human in the loop is going to be better than just having AI do it completely.
I'm glad you brought that up. Charlie, I want you to answer, but I'm going to come back to that human element. What ethical issues and potential biases?
Yeah, human in loop is exactly where I was going. That's the first thing that I was kind of thinking of when this topic came to mind. And I think, maybe another thing just to be aware of, maybe get an understanding of the models that are out there and the things that some do better than others, right? So, like Hillary mentioned, some models do some things better than others. So having an understanding of that, again, being able to ask those questions of these tools, like what models are you using for this specific function? Is it a good solution? Is it the best solution that can be in there? Because sometimes maybe those decisions were not made for the exact right reasons. Also, there are options, folks make choices. Sometimes those choices are governed by this was the right choice to make, or this was influenced by some other circumstance that maybe made us choose a different model. But it's a real thing. I agree. Human has to be in the loop with all things. It is a tool. It's an extension. It allows us to be more productive, more powerful, but it is not a replacement. So we always have to vet those things for bias. And then again, as we're kind of putting more information in, we can help maybe thwart and influence how that bias is represented over time, but that will take time.
I think we put a lot on technology. We implement a new tool and we put a lot on it, and we expect this state of perfection from it. Like, I don't have to think about this anymore. And no, you do. You do. You can't pull yourself entirely back from this situation. I feel like I find myself in all these AI conversations these days. And are you worried about it taking your job? I haven't seen an AI bot win a Pulitzer yet, so I'm really not too worried about this. That's not to say that, but again, you mentioned the training and those kinds of things. So we have to be aware. We have to be engaged ourselves as the ones implementing these tools. Do either one of you want to talk about any steps? You've given a lot of information here so far, but what steps schools can take to ensure responsible implementation? And that could be everything from training. What is your sense of, as you've been working with different schools, are there certain common implementation mistakes that you've seen, or certain common things that schools are doing well?
I don't know if you want to go first, Charlie.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, we think about security and responsible AI in kind of three different ways. So the first is protecting that PII, making sure that you've got a safety net in place, and just general training on not putting, personal information in there. And that goes for whatever tool you're using, and also the free versions. The second piece, I think, around responsible AI is how students are using it. Obviously for cheating and things like that, but you don't want it to become a tool where they can harass other students. You want to look at, or bullying, or self-harm is a big topic in AI recently with what happened in ChatGPT. And so you want to make sure that you have some kind of control over the input and output of what the student can put in and what the AI would give you back. And that's going to be different for every grade level and every person in the school. A third grader is going to need different permissions than a 12th grader in a literature class would. If a principal is reviewing an incident between two students, they're going to need different permissions than the 12th grader. So look for solutions that have multi-pronged, data protection approach and security approach. And one size doesn't always fit all for responsible AI. And then the third piece is like protecting those agents from, malicious attacks. So kids are crazy. They learn things on YouTube. They're going to figure out how to jailbreak that agent. So give me an A regardless of what answer I say. Or, if you have a parent chat bot on your website, you don't want someone to have that act in a way that it wasn't designed to. And so I think that's something that we're hearing a lot outside of education and AI, and it's slowly coming to education. So something to think about down the line, are people testing their agents? If you're using something for a lesson plan generator or a student tutor, are they testing it to make sure that it can't be malicious? So I think there's a lot of different areas of what we would call responsible AI, just outside of like bias and those types of things.
Those are really, really good words. I hadn't thought about some of the things that you mentioned, but I can see how quickly and how easily. And I think this is a point in history. Dr. Zhao and I were talking about this earlier. We don't know everything about this thing yet, and I think we admit that we don't know everything about everything, and it's evolving all the time. So it's prudent to watch and see what other industries and what practices we can learn from. And education doesn't typically do that. It's such an insulated market, and its needs are very unique. So I understand it, but I think this is a place where we should have our eyes open and looking outside. Charlie, what did you want to say about implementation and such?
One thing that we have seen that's worked fairly well in some of the schools where they have it is establishing kind of an AI ethics or an AI adoption committee. So having kind of a group of stakeholders that are representative of the cross section that are going to be using these tools, either to perform whatever action or just on the consumption side, that are pulling together kind of a set of guiding principles to really govern what that adoption is. That seems to really work well, rather than it being one person's or a situational responsibility that, this team's pulling in some AI tool to perform this function and a different team is pulling in another AI tool to perform another function. I think having that centralized body and voice ensures that you're employing a consistent approach to your adoption in use of any AI tool. And there's multiples, right? There's multiple tools, ed tech tools that are out there. The AI tools are innumerable. They're all over the place.
And I think that's a place where you really want different perspectives.
Yep.
I would not want all of that responsibility on my shoulders. I'm going to miss something. So those are good words. And that's a very practical way of building that out. Thank you, both of you. So let's talk about best practices. Let's move to the instructional side for a bit. What best practices can you recommend for training teachers and helping them just get comfortable with experimenting and getting creative with AI? Charlie, let's start here with you.
Well, I always like to play with things. So I always like having a sandbox environment, somewhere that's a safe space that we can try things out. Maybe try it before you buy it, or try it before you pull the car off the lot. I always like getting in and getting our hands dirty with a new tool so that we can really test it out before it goes live, before it goes prime time. I think that's one of the best ways to find out where those maybe nooks and crannies hide, where a kiddo is going to try to break it. Just like Hillary said, if it's a possibility, they're going to find a way to do it. Folks will find a way to do it, and not just kids. Anyone will. We were just doing an exercise a few weeks ago where we were interfacing with a learning assistant, and we had about 30 folks in a room. Everyone was coming at this thing from a different direction, and we were just hearing the pop-ups like, "Oh, I made it do this thing, and I made it do that thing," and it didn't give me the answer, but I was able to kind of frame my question in this sort of way, and it did give me the answer. So really just getting through, and that was a super valuable exercise that we went through to really test the product out that we were utilizing and give great feedback to the group that had designed the product. So I think that's one of the best ways. And then naturally, because this is evolving so quickly, really just trying to keep up with the latest enhancements, the latest trends, and making sure the training or PD is happening on as regular a basis as reasonable. But sometimes I think AI is maybe moving so fast that it's almost not reasonable to implement that PD as quickly as it's evolving. But those are kind of my two key things. I always like having kind of a safe space to try something out, and kind of taking that.
And I think that's fair. I think, giving ourselves a safe space hopefully it takes some of the pressure off. Dr. Zhao was talking about that earlier. Like, it's super important in this personalized learning thing to just let students explore. And I think that's something that we really want to encourage, that autonomy among our educators, and just explore. It's fine. It's fine to go down this route. Didn't work, and it failed, if you want to use that word. I like the way he put it. He goes, it's fine to go down the road and then give up because it doesn't work. You don't like the thing. It's okay to stop doing that. And I think that's what you're talking about here. You're talking about exploration. Just giving yourself permission to explore and to play with it and to discover things that you probably would not have discovered any other way. Hillary, what are your thoughts on how we can just really nurture that almost adventure spirit?
Yeah, I agree with Charlie. Try everything. Almost every tool out there has some kind of free version for teachers to use. So just start. And sometimes it can be daunting because, hey, we have to use AI in the classroom and it's everywhere and I can't stop thinking about it and it's tied to work. So when I get done teaching for the day, I don't want to come home and learn one thing. Start using it for fun. Think about different ways you can use AI to plan your trip. Or when I first got into this, I was like, what can it do? I have this in my fridge. What can I make with this? Or help me meal plan for the week, or just random stuff like that, that once you get comfortable learning what it can do, it'll start the juices flowing to understand how you can use it in your classroom. And then if you want to just start using it in schools, we typically say, like, think of things that really take a lot of time. What can we do to just give you back a couple minutes? Teachers are always getting additional things on their plate. Now you have to be in charge of math club after school, and you've never been in charge of math club. You can go to, a large language model and tell them what grade your students are, what the club is about, what are some activities I can do. Use it as a brainstorming tool, I think, and just play around with it is the best place to start. And I think the rest will come. But
I thought that was like a common understanding thing, but I'm now learning more and more. It's not really.
Yeah.
I just recently got into plants. I don't know why. I just did. My kids moved out, so now I'm playing with plants. And it occurred to me that you can't just go get a plant from Trader Joe's, bring it home and put it out there. And, there's a whole process to repotting and everything and the water, and they can't all be in the same place. So some need more, light and so forth. So on a hunch, I went to ChatGPT and said, give me a watering schedule and pot, and it was such a relief, but it never would have occurred to me to do something like that and so I think that we are in that place where we have to just start, even if it's the small questions, start moving forward. Are you guys seeing more, like, when you think about your customers that you're working with, do you see more of an openness to playing with AI, to trying it out, to, you know, generative AI and some of these other things? Are you seeing more of a willingness?
I think from my perspective going into this school year, it feels markedly different than what it was last year, where there is more of an openness going into the school year. Last year, I wouldn't have had that opinion. There was a lot more resistance, it felt. Folks didn't really want to hear about it. There were a lot of kind of hard-nosed rules that said, we don't want anything to do with it. We're not adopting it. It seems like that pendulum has kind of swung the other way a little bit, or is at least starting to, where we're seeing more folks aren't even just a little bit open to it. They seem to be very much embracing it and saying, you know, we want to have some component, whether it's just for the novelty of having the component in place or not. But I'd say from my perspective, I think that pendulum is swinging the right way because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So the openness, I think, is great if we can just learn together through that process.
Hillary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this school year, most people we got to do something, but I think we were just on a call with a school yesterday and I asked, what are you trying to accomplish with AI? And they were like, that's a great question. I don't know. And so you really have to think about, we're not just doing it to do it. How can we use this in our class, our campus, our district? And if you're just using it as rewrite this paragraph or as a glorified Google search, it's a great place to start, but you're missing how life-changing it can really help in your day-to-day. So I think people are a lot more open to it, but are still trying to figure out, how can we use this? What are some unique ways that, other schools you work with? So in that case, I would say check out people's social media pages, they're always posting helpful tips. Their customers are always posting how they're using the tools too. And it could give you more creative ways of using those AI tools that you didn't really think about before.
That is such a practical way of thinking about that, going to the social media. That's really good.
Reddit, how are people using this? Teachers are very active and talking with other people. So
they are.
It's out there. You just kind of have to find it.
Yeah. And I think also there's a lot of ways that, well, Charlie, let me quickly comment on something that you said, which I agree with 1,000%, is that we started this AI Impact Summit 3 years ago. And in that first year, it was all about Gen AI, all about ChatGPT. Teachers having to play cop in their own classrooms. Then, last year, the conversation had evolved more and there was more stretching out, looking at it through the lens of assessment, looking at it through the lens of some other possibilities, but still a bit more on the conservative side. This year, we noticed that there's definitely more of a swing. And I think I understand something you said. It takes me back to last year, which is this: policy and law and money are the three things that are always going to make a big impact in schools. And some of our laws have not caught up to the technology. Some policies still left a little too much wiggle room. And schools were being conservative on purpose so that they were protecting their assets. And I get that. And so that's, I think, the encouraging thing is that with the speed of it, even though it can be overwhelming, boiling the ocean, we're figuring out how to swim in this thing. We're figuring out how to do this. And that's encouraging. So I always like to wrap up conversations with an encouraging note. So I want, let's give the folks some takeaways, some practical things that they can take back to their sites. What advice do you have for school leaders who want to get more out of AI this year? Those who want to branch out with their instruction or get a better handle on students, or they want to improve engagement or nurture active learning in an online environment. Pick something. Give us your thoughts. Hillary, would you like to start us off here?
Sure. I think for teachers, it's a really easy place to start. Start with generating lesson plans and then differentiate those lesson plans for different learners in your class to their interests. That's a really easy entry point. For administrators, sorry, my dog's there. For administrators, I would say think large scale. What are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to increase graduation rates? Are we trying to increase attendance? A lot of times you have a lot of information that nobody has time to go through. Everyone's underwater when it comes to work, that AI can do an analysis and then help you come up with some of those interventions. So think big picture, what is it that we're trying to work on, and can AI help us with this? And then just get out there and start playing with the free stuff. Like I said, there's a bunch of free tools out there. They have a lot of quick and easy wins to get you comfortable with how to use AI. And then there's also some tools that's like the next level up, your AI 201, that if you want to create some custom solutions for, again, your class, your campus, your district, wherever you fall in that, it's really easy to do that. But just get used to it. And a lot of people will wait for their school to teach them AI literacy or things like that. I would say, do some research on the end, like what are common AI terms that I need to know? Like, you know, I'm getting started with AI. What do I need to know? And just kind of taking reins over your own PD, if you will.
I agree. Good for you. I like that. Taking the reins, boiling the ocean and taking the reins. I like this. Charlie.
So I think it really depends on what your school stands on, and depending on where you start. But I really like take the reins. I would also kind of take that and add to it to say, be an advocate in your school. If your school's taking a stance where they're really kind of being passive or just kind of waiting to see what happens, be an advocate, be a voice in that space, and maybe find those like-minded individuals within your school that you guys can band together and maybe do your own thing until maybe the school catches up. I think that's one method. I think from administrators, depending on where you are, whether you're a complete novice when it comes to AI or you were an early adopter back in the day a couple of years ago. I think it comes down to having a very clear vision. And Hillary, you were kind of talking about this as well. What is the problem that you're trying to solve, or even not solve, but maybe help with, right? Because maybe AI isn't a solution, but maybe it can just help you along the way to do that analytical work that no one has time to do, right? And that's just one example. There are multiple examples that are like that AI can help take some of those clerical tasks away, some of those maybe more mundane tasks from anything in education, even beyond education. We were just sharing some examples a few minutes ago. I think there are lots of possibilities where it can just help us facilitate the day-to-day a little bit more easily. And the other thing that I would really, really recommend, and I really like seeing when these come out, there are many of them, is there are entities that have kind of developed these rubrics for adoption. So looking into, like I know One Ed Tech has one. There are other entities that are kind of these centralized bodies that can help schools. They can help organizations kind of through that AI adoption process, that you don't have to go and necessarily be your own expert. They kind of give you the playbook to understand how to wade into through these rubrics, through these kind of checkpoints, how to adopt AI tools, how to vet tools, the questions to ask. They kind of give you those guiding principles so that you don't have to be that expert, and that it was curated from kind of that cross-functional expertise as well. So I would really recommend that as well for anyone. That really goes for anyone, whether it's a teacher, administrator, whomever. Seek those out and maybe utilize one or multiples of those in your process when you're taking steps to utilize AI tools in your school, in your classroom, and really at whatever level.
That's wonderful. I like the point you make about advocacy, be an advocate for this. Dr. Zhao made a similar point earlier, is that, change happens on an individual level. So be that individual, take the reins. And I think we're naturally going to know where our boundaries are, but be that advocate, be the one that is willing to sort of, one thing that I really emphasize to my children is, look, I'll help you solve problems, but don't problem dump on me. Don't just throw something into my lap, and that's exhausting. And so take the problem out of the administrator's hands. Be an advocate, be the person that is not just being the cheerleader, but is helping to lead something in your school, and hopefully taking that responsibility off of somebody else, or at least creating a better collaborative spirit, so that it's not all landing on one person. I think that's where we see some of the resistance. When we talk to educators, it is, I'm so overwhelmed by all of this, but when you start breaking this down into small pieces, it's a lot more manageable. And then you finally see there's a lot of room to find your own space in this thing called AI. You don't have to be an expert overnight. And I think that's something important. And I appreciate the way that you both brought that up. Um, Wonderful conversation. Those are excellent words. I really, really appreciate it. And they are the perfect way for us to end this session and bring it to a close. And thank you to all of you for attending our conversation today. It's always wonderful to be here with all of you. And we wish you well as you move forward with your AI strategies and successes.